It's time to shake up that paradigm. Welcome to Infinite Banking Radio.
Hey everybody, thank you for downloading this month's podcast. This is Patrick Donohoe. You are listening to Infinite Banking Radio. Hope everybody is having a good fall so far. It's going to be much better after we have this conversation today. But first, as far as announcements are concerned, we've recently relaunched our e-learning program, Infinite 101. So make sure you go to our website, www.paradigmlife.net, and register for that. It's absolutely free, and it's also the platform that we're going to launch our client portal on. So our client portal is specifically for clients. And it's not free. Just clients that actually go through our process and do business with us will have access to that. But like I said, it's on the same platform. So make sure, again, you go to our website, www.paradigmlife.net. Also, this podcast is being videoed. We're going to start a video podcast through our YouTube channel. So if you do want to see us, I'm sure we sound much better than we look. You can do so by going to our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Paradigm Life. Okay, so the reason why I think this month's podcast is going to be awesome is I have a really special individual here, Eric McGuire, and Eric and I have been I think connected on LinkedIn for a number of years, but never actually connected literally, even though you were just 45 minutes an hour away. But Eric, his brother was in the financial services industry and was a big influence on me a number of years ago, and tragically passed away in an airplane crash in 2006. And he did quite a bit. We're going to talk a lot about him today, as well as his one of the publications he made, which is called The Economic Value of Certainty. But Eric, why don't you just maybe take a moment and introduce yourself and where you're from, what you're about, family situation, just general introduction.
Great. Yeah, I'm glad to be on the call. Like you said, I'm the brother of Les McGuire, and I live in Provo, Utah, just south of Salt Lake, and have a family, 5 kids at the moment, wife, just great life, beautiful kids, happy, living the dream. So. And
you and Les got you into the financial services industry back in 2005-ish, 2006-ish, correct?
Yeah, it was a little bit before that.
Okay.
He discovered these things early 2000s, and I was just graduating from college in 2001. And so he introduced me to these concepts, and me as a business owner at the time, he introduced it to me as a business owner, and I loved it. Graduating college, but I still had a business on the side. And then so he introduced it first that way, and then I started to mentor under him and follow him around to kind of help him out. Never formally got into where I was meeting one-on-one with clients, but I'd be in meetings with him. And so I learned these principles from him. And then when he passed away in 2006, kind of took the torch over and saw the value and the what he did to people's lives. And I wanted to have that same impact with people. Yeah. So that's what got me in the business in 2006, to meet one-on-one with people and start helping them directly.
And you probably felt like I was stalking you, but I when we met up this summer, I emailed you through LinkedIn, and then we met up, and I'm like, man, I don't know if you know who I am. I'm sorry. I swear I'm not going to sell you Amway or anything. but we had a great conversation, hit it off, and obviously, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and so it's going to be a really cool conversation today. And
you were actually on my to-do list at the time too to call.
Oh, yes, right.
You were on my mind earlier in the spring, more March, April time. Yeah. I was thinking I should call Patrick up and just connect and get to know him. And we were actually friends on Facebook too, so both places. I would see you pop up here and there, and every time I saw it, I think I better reach out to him. But you beat me to the punch, so you get credit for everything.
And it's been really cool because you've we've been working together for almost 6 months now, and it's been really awesome to have your perspective on things. So we're going to talk primarily today about one of the publications that Les wrote. What year did he write The Economic Value of Certainty?
I know he wrote it ironically on my birthday, August 19th,
really?
But I can't remember what date. I think I put it in here.
It was probably 2004, 2005.
I think it was 2005 if I remember correctly.
Okay. So we're gonna put the PDF, and we have a really neat pamphlet that you actually published, which is right there. But we'll put the PDF and also some contact information if you would like the actual physical pamphlet. So let's talk about the economic value of certainty. I mean, what's the premise? What's the premise behind it?
He basically brought it into, it's really a principle that we operate in our life all the time. We don't really identify it, but he tried to identify it and then tie it to the financial services industry. Okay. And we get raised with certain phrases, and he doesn't include this in this publication, but a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. Mm-hmm. We've heard of all these things as we're been brought up. Yeah. But that's really, what is he talking about? Certainty. Something in the hand is worth more than not in the hand. And so he talks about, in the economic sense, a guaranteed dollar has more value than a non-guaranteed dollar.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think in a sense, whether we acknowledge it as such, work on a kind of a probability. And it's the probability of this, the probability of that. I mean, the probability of tomorrow is very high just because we've experienced new days. Yeah. The probability that our routines in life are not going to change are pretty certain. And so if you look at certainty to a lot of people is very boring. And I think that human beings, we always gravitate toward what's exciting or what's on the edge, what's edgy, and that's I think that it's hurtful in a sense, because looking at certainty, I guess there's a pro and a con. If you're certain about something, it could definitely mitigate or hinder progress, right? Yeah. But at the same time, certainty also allows for a much more open mind and a clarity to be able to progress at a faster rate. So let's maybe go into that. So I think looking at human beings, if you get comfortable in a specific, whether it's your job or whether it's your life, I guess it's productive in a sense, but how is it unproductive?
Say that again. Sorry, I missed.
So looking at your routine, your habits, getting kind of in that stage of life, everything's good. So in a sense, that is good. Yeah. But also, how does that hinder progress?
Oh, I see. Yeah. If you don't introduce new ideas and think and be a producer, as my brother would say, he didn't coin the phrase, but used all the time, producer consumer, and said as a producer, you're always looking at how to add value to yourself and to other people. Yep. And ultimately, to add more value to yourself is by serving other people, is what he would teach. And he'd say, wealth is in your mind. Yep. And if you don't help other people and increase their life and help them, your life will stay stale and stagnant. Yeah, and of course, that's the main thing is life. I guess they're static. A static set of circumstances. It can exist, but also it can be defined as regression as opposed to progression, because there's always more that we can do. Yep. Okay? There's always more value that we can create. There's always more love that we can give. There's always more that we can do. But if we get in this very safe and secure mentality, then why should we do it? Because it's going to compromise our safety and security potentially, right? Yeah. Yeah. So looking at the economic value of certainty, I think kind of where he was pointing to, and as far as from what I actually have not read it recently, but obviously it's made a huge impression because I think about it a lot. But the idea is so that fear doesn't necessarily exist, because when fear occupies the mind, that's one of the most destructive things that can occur. And I think a lot of people these days are very fearful because there's a lot of unknowns out there. And it can become a poison to an extent, and it can be viral and just get involved in our thoughts and put us in different moods, and that affects everything around us. So, looking at the economic value of certainty, how does that help eliminate fear? Yeah, I'm glad you brought up fear, because fear is a big one, and Les talked a lot about fear. Those that ever went to his seminars or talked to him, fear is a huge subject that he covered. And the reason is fear is usually not the primary condition. It's a secondary cause. And what it is usually a cause from is uncertainty. Things that we're not familiar with, we're fearful of. Yep. And as people break out of fears, whether it's of heights or spiders or something, it becomes the more contact or the more knowledge they have about something, the less fearful they are of it. And so to break through fear is to get information, good information, obviously, and the more certainty and information you have about something, the less fearful you are. So how does that apply to finances then? Directly, kind of what I said before, a guaranteed dollar is worth more than a future dollar that's unguaranteed. And I think for the human condition, I think we're really, really good at operating when we know the parts and we know the variables and we know what's going on. And we get kind of a paralysis when there's parts of something that we don't know. We're fearful to move forward into something if there's unknowns that we don't know how to handle. Yeah, I think. And if you look at, I think debt is something people are afraid of, not because of the debt itself or what the debt purchased,
but because there are payments associated with it, and those payments have to be made for a specific period of time, there's an unknown out in the future, which is, am I going to be able to make this? Therefore, trying to eliminate that future fear, I mean, I guess just kind of subconsciously people would pay off debt, which is the only way in which that can be accomplished, which is obviously not the case, but nonetheless, that's what people are trying to do, is always solve the problem of either a present fear or a future fear.
Yeah. And with that same fear, I think people are taught now, and this is what we try to kind of debunk, is that to prepare for retirement, they have to have their money in the market. And the market is up and down. So they live throughout their working career with money in the market. Their retirement is basically hanging in the market. And there's a fear behind it that you don't know when you hit the age that you say you want to retire, whether the money will be there. And he was saying, if you could get the same results, get the same money at retirement, but it's a guaranteed dollar to be there, your working years will be great. And plus, you'll be happy because you know it's going to be there. And also, that will unlock your mind to do things that you would never have done before in that fear paradigm.
And right now, I mean, if you look, there's studies done and surveys that's the top main fears of especially older individuals, which is running out of money, or healthcare problems. But I was having a conversation with a neighbor of mine, and it's awesome because we do all of our business over the internet, and so we don't have to go and tackle our neighbors to do business with us. But it was interesting having a conversation and just individuals, how they look at just a simple idea that's brought about through the traditional financial services industry with qualified plans and what the market does over time and what your money is going to be. And he was talking about, man, I could, in 100 years, my kids could have $50 million inside of their Roth IRA. And I'm like, yeah, they probably could, but I mean, what does that matter now? Because obviously, who knows what circumstances are going to be like then? Who knows what $50 million is going to buy then? But at the same time, individually, I think as part of our society, money is kind of what makes the world go round, as the saying says. And if we're going to be in a modern society, we're going to have to transact. We're going to have to deal with money to some extent. So looking at certainty, I mean, that obviously is going to create circumstances in your mind that are going to eliminate fear, optimize progression. So is there anything else like in the pamphlet that Les talked about, which is how is the economic value of certainty going to help individuals? Or how would it help individuals?
No, I'm glad you brought that up, because if you can see the picture I chose to put on the cover is a chess game. And he loved the game of chess for the reason that a master chess player playing a novice chess player will never lose. It's not a game of chess. Chess is not like rolling the dice and sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. You play cards or dice, and those an expert player, a novice player can sometimes beat him because it's a game of chance. Much like the market's a game of chance. Where a chess game is something that a good player will never lose to a poor player. And he makes the analogy of that towards money, and I'll just read a quote out of it. He says, master players do not focus on the inherent strength of individual pieces or products like a novice player does, is just get everything out of the move, free up the queen and just move the queen around. That's every move. It says, but rather on strategic coordination of all the pieces. Master chess players also value protection at a premium, even above opportunity. They are patient because they know that if they can avoid losing their resources, eventually lucrative opportunities will arise. And I love that. And he talks about how a chess player can beat you with a pawn just as easy as he can beat you with a queen. And he looks at everything in a macro, and that's what we try to teach people. Say, look at the big picture. Don't look at one product. Look at everything going on and coordinate those. And
if individuals just knew about what the pawn could do and didn't know how the other pieces operated, I mean, that's all they're going to be able to deal with.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think, there's obviously a tremendous amount of parallel there to other aspects besides finance. But at the end of the day, I think if you look at human beings and what our capacity is, we're never going to know everything. But I think in our day and age, there is such an immense amount of access to resources that whether it's individuals or whether it's books or whether it's information online, it could provide us the education around these pieces so that we can eventually become a master. Because like I said, we have to deal with money, and most individuals are just I don't want to have to deal with it, and therefore I'm going to give it to somebody else because I think that they're an expert. So it's not necessarily a matter of control now; it's a matter of trust.
Exactly, and we live in a world that is uncertain. But what he is saying, he's not saying we can't control the world around us. What we can control is ourselves. And we talk about this a lot, and as we get together, that we help our clients have the maximum number of choices. Because when you move forward 20 years, if you have 5 choices versus one choice, then you have a lot more options. So if the world is different 20 years from now than what you thought it would be, you have 5 choices versus 1 choice. And the more choices you can have, and the more freedom and flexibility, the more power you have and the more certainty.
Well, it makes you think different. And I think at the end of the what Les is trying to get across is the ability to critically think.
Yeah.
Is to rationalize different choices, is to rationalize options. And unless you have a specific system or a set of rules or something to initiate that, you're not going to do it. And I think these days, unfortunately, I think we all fall victim to this, which is not critically thinking. We always look at the status quo. We look at popular opinion. We look to those who are on a pedestal who sound like they know what they're doing.
Yep.
And because of that, that's what allows us to make a decision. And it's not necessarily the right thing. Even though it may sound good, it may not be the right thing. And so as far as getting to this idea of certainty, there's a lot of responsibility on the shoulders of the individual to recognize that it is certain. And then once they do have some sort of clarity around it, it's to take action. And actually do something about the circumstances.
No, I like it. I like what you're saying too, because I feel like when we teach people, we don't, versus the popular media, we're not introducing just a product and saying do this, this, and this. We start with education, and it always goes back to education, and we'll even drag out the process with someone for the education purpose. And Les talked about it before, that in the world of financial planning, saying I'll do it because I trust you is like the most coveted thing a financial advisor can get, and that's exactly what we don't want. We don't want people just doing it because they trust us. They want to do it because they know what they're doing. They have the knowledge. We've increased their capacity to make decisions, and they're empowered by that. Yeah, I love that when we meet with clients, that we're not just trying to push the latest product on someone. We're trying to educate them on how to think, paradigm life. Obviously, a different paradigm of thinking will give them greater certainty.
And at the end of the day, I mean, you look at money itself and where money comes from. I mean, money doesn't just appear. I mean, money is a representation of a person.
Yeah.
Okay, the money doesn't exist unless they've done something, and so that something is essentially what they controlled, and it came from them. It was part of them. It was a part of a talent or ability and so forth. And then subsequently getting the excess, because obviously money is spent on lifestyle, it's spent on entertainment, but then the excess goes to somebody that didn't earn it. Now that's where you have the majority of issues, and it comes down to how people have been programmed, and I think we're all, again, like I said, we're all programmed. We're all susceptible to stimuli, and if it's repetitive, we're automatically programmed, whether we like it or not. But it's really thinking through that programming. And I think these days, if you were to ask or start a conversation around investments, people would just go right to a specific type of investment, just because it's the most common repetitive stimuli which is out there, which is the market.
Exactly.
But then you look at how the market works and how it operates, and you look at history, and you actually critically think through it. It is one of the worst places for money, the traditional way, unless you have a business and you trade. And I mean, maybe there can be an argument, but as far as the traditional way of doing things, there's no brain function whatsoever. It's all based on luck, because nobody can control it.
And you're right. And most financial planners will say money is the only variable they touch. And to go back to his article or his pamphlet that he wrote, he says his definition of economics is a science of scarcity. And he says money is certainly a scarce resource, but we must remember that it is not the only limited resource in people's lives. Hence, economics is not inherently a financial discipline, but rather a science of the efficient use of any resource. And he goes on and lists some of those, and he says, where he says, risk is not limited to the potential loss of money, but also broadened to include the possibility of underutilization of any resource. Our clients possess numerous non-financial resources that must also be considered. And this is where our education comes in. He says these include assets such as time, effort, focus, attention, hope, faith, love, integrity, desire to contribute and excel, and willingness to take risk. And I think that's what we bring all that stuff in for the well-being of their life. If we're not increasing all those, then we're not doing our job. We're not just focused on money. We're focused on overall well-being.
Well, money. I mean, at the end of the day, what's the output people are looking for as it pertains to money? It's it's more money, it's a cash flow, it's a dollar amount, etc.
Or happiness.
Or happiness. You know, whatever it provides, that's ultimately what the outcome is. But money is not the only variable, and that's kind of what he's saying.
Exactly.
There's so many different variables involved, and so if you think money is the only variable, then you're gambling.
Exactly.
But now you look at, you know, how you created the money in the first place, and then now how you can think about what to do with it to make it productive. Yeah. That's another thing. And yeah, a bird in the hand or two in the bush, whatever the metaphor, the analogy that you use, you're going to be the best steward over your money. Yep. Ultimately, at the end of the day, even though somebody else may be able to throw it here, throw it there, and earn a rate of return, they may be able to do that. They may lose it. There may be things outside of their control that happen. But at the end of the day, if you study, if you learn, if you dedicate yourself to actually thinking and looking for opportunities, they're everywhere.
Yeah, and he'd often say, what you're doing, does it work across all circumstances or only the best circumstances? You know, and I think a lot of people, you know, they put money towards a retirement, that it only works if everything goes
right.
Yep.
and that's anti-life, because things are always going to go different than we plan, because human beings are fallible. We change our minds. Yep. Different trends affect and influence things. I mean, it's just amazing to think about life and how fast-paced it is these days, how many things are changing, and how that is a ripple effect through everything.
Yep.
So yeah, I think the immediacy, as well as looking at, you know, what a game plan is, or a system, or a strategy, it has to be relevant now and also relevant in the future. Yep. And looking at the stock market, that's just simply not the case. I mean, think about it. True. Go back to, you know, the turn of the century. There wasn't E-Trade or Ameritrade. I mean, there had to be some antiquated set of procedures to actually make the stock market work. But now, what do you do? I mean, I could log on here and within 30 seconds buy 100 shares in Levi's or whatever. And so a lot of the market these days is changing, but people look at it that it's the same as it was 100 years ago. Yeah. It's just simply not.
And he'd even touch on that, saying if you bought 100 shares of Levi, what control do you have on whether Levi is successful or not? Yeah. None. Yeah. Like, I mean, you can buy their shares, but you have no control whether it's that. Where banking on yourself, the philosophy is you are accountable, you're responsible, but you have control of you. Yep. You can make the decisions. You can think for yourself. You can, as time goes on, make the proper choices to better yourself. Yep. You have complete control.
And now that you think about it, I mean, one of the thoughts that's going through my head is the idea of certainty. And because obviously we use a financial product, that's how we get paid. That's what our business really is. But it's a financial product that has transcended so many different time periods, and it's not based on some, you know, set of circumstances that may or may not happen. I mean, it's contingent on what is inevitably going to happen to everyone. Yep. And looking at probability and statistics, all you really need now. Again, I don't think there's anything as a perfect absolute. But if you look at, you know, death, I think it is in a sense absolute. But just statistics in general, if you have a big enough sample size, you can know what sort of events are going to happen. That's why most insurance companies are profitable, is because they have a large amount of data, and they're able to look at what variables pertain to this data and how do we price that to be profitable. And at the end of the day, insurance companies, that's essentially what they do. There's not much gambling there whatsoever. And then it comes down to, you know, who are the owners of the insurance company. So obviously through our strategies, it's leveraging mutual companies, because because you're essentially an owner in that very likely probability model. Yeah,
exactly. And in here, to just quote him again, he says, so the best way to make economic choices is not to bet on the future based on results from the past, but to test the performance of every choice against the widest range of possibilities, from the absolute best case scenario to the absolute worst case scenario. It's kind of what you're saying, that you know, don't drive the car based on the past. Drive the car based on all the possibilities of the future. Yeah, and look to the future.
That's interesting. No, it's such a. And it's, again, like I said, it corresponds to so many different aspects of life. But obviously, money is really what's on everybody's mind throughout the day. Yeah. And it typically is not always a favorable outlook or perspective. And you hear oftentimes with, you know, individuals dreading opening some sort of quarterly statement or opening up their brokerage account, because again, it's a gamble. Will it be higher or will it be lower? But there's no set of certain circumstances whatsoever there.
Yeah. And I think I won't read it, but I'll use his analogy because I think this will kind of tie it together for listeners. But he talks about driving down a 100-mile stretch of highway. I don't know if you remember this or not. And anybody that's driven, in the South, you get freezes every once in a while. You always see the signs by bridges, that the bridges may have frozen over when temperatures get down. So most of the country has it. Can drive in places where black ice is a real thing. Yep. So you're driving down this 100-mile stretch of freeway. You hit black ice. The car goes out of control. Luckily, you get it back into control. But what's going on? You're tightened up. Adrenaline's pumping. Fear sets in, right? And he says, the next 100 miles, how do you drive? Do you drive 100 miles an hour or do you drive 40 miles an hour? Yep. Obviously, you drive much slower because of the uncertainty ahead. Yep. And he said, after you've driven the 100 miles, you look back and you may never hit black ice again, but you drove 40 miles an hour during that period of time. Yep. Versus if at that time you hit black ice and then you recover, if someone trusted had just traveled the road right in front of you 10 minutes before and was giving you updates, and they said the road is clear, guaranteed. Yeah. Or the case he uses in here, it's the summertime, 100-degree weather. Yeah. There's no black ice. How do you drive? You drive, speed limit or, maybe 10 over. If it was less, 100 miles an hour. But
did he drive fast?
Oh yeah, he loved cars and driving fast. But anyway, so you drive, 80 maybe instead of 40. And that's the certainty he's talking about, is when you have that certainty of what the future holds, you can perform differently today. And he uses another analogy saying, if you have a rich great uncle that leaves you $1 million, and you're going to get that $1 million a year from today, and you go verify it, you see it, it's in gold or something sitting in a vault. You can touch it, look at it, but you can't do anything with it for 1 year. Does your life change today? Absolutely. Right? I mean, you live life differently today, even though you don't get that $1 million for a year. Yeah. And as you start pushing it, does it change if it moves 2 years or 5 years or 10 years? And that's what you're talking about. We have a certainty of the mortality rate of humans. We know everyone's going to die. Life insurance companies are good at predicting that. Yep. And there's a certain event that will happen in everybody's life. And because of that certainty, we can perform differently today.
It's interesting. As you were talking about kind of speeding, there was a special, I think I've mentioned on the podcast before, there was a special called Mind Over Money on PBS, and I think this was a couple of years ago, but on this special it just talked about what kind of goes on in the brain of somebody, their brain activity associated with financial decisions. And one of the tests that they did is they went into a mall and they kind of asked a set of questions, and they said, if we were to give you $1,000 a year from now, okay, and the day presented itself and you had to wait one more day for $1,010, would you wait that day? Okay, and what do you think most people said?
Probably no. Or yes, I don't know.
They said yes. Yeah. They said, I've already waited a year. What's one more day?
Gotcha.
Then they presented them with the question, which is, if we were to give you $900 today or $1,000 tomorrow, what would you take?
Did they change?
Yeah, they changed.
They did?
Yeah.
Huh.
I said, I'd take $900 today.
Wow.
So my point is, I think we look at kind of what drives the decisions that we make, and we're very short term.
We are.
Even though finances is a marathon. I mean, our life. It depends on how old you are, of course. But, your life could stretch on for another 50, 60, 70, 80 years. So you're not really concerned about 30 years from now or 20 years from now or 50 years from now.
Yeah.
Okay? You're concerned about right now. And what is, what's sexy, what's exciting, can you take the risks? That's what people always say. Well, I can afford the risks. And it's amazing that if you don't, because again, that scenario, waiting an extra day a year from now or waiting an extra day today, it's the same variables.
Yeah.
Okay. But looking at how perspective changes is very interesting, because obviously immediacy and wanting good returns, wanting to take risks, I can understand that. I understand where the human energy comes from to basically make that decision. But at the same time, you have to rationally think through that and see what's occurred in the past, what's most likely going to happen in the future, and it never ends up the way people think.
I'm glad you brought that up, because he addresses that as well, talking about risk, and we've really been duped into thinking that to be prosperous you have to take risk.
Yep.
And to prove it is to say, you think being, risky, people say, oh yeah, it's the sexy thing to do.
Yeah.
But if you say, I can guarantee you tomorrow to have $1,000, or you can take some risk and it may or may not be there. Which one do you want to take? You always want to take the guarantee.
Yeah.
But for some reason, people think in the market, to be successful, you have to be risky.
Yep.
And that's what we kind of try to teach people, is that your success does not depend on how much risk you're willing to take. It actually depends on how much you want to get rid of. Warren Buffett, probably one of the richest people and most savvy investors we know, his mantra is never lose money. Don't take risk. He mitigates his risk to as near zero as possible. Yep. And he's the smartest one at this game. So he doesn't think risk is sexy, but we've kind of been taught, hey, to get a higher rate of return is sexy, so to risk yourself, and it's foolish.
And it kind of goes to your comment on the 100 shares of Levi's. That's the thing, is he knows how to go in, value the business, and he's not going to buy 100 shares. He's going to buy the majority shares and operate it like a business and have the influence over directing that. So most people say, oh well, Buffett's in the market and Benjamin Graham was in the market, but no, they invested a lot differently because it was business. It was things that they control. If they didn't have control, they'd have no business in that type of investment. So,
exactly. And one thing that you mentioned that I liked as well, talking about risk in these things, is we project that we'll be a different person down the road. But if we hate paying taxes today, what makes you think when you get... So if we defer money now, so because we don't want to pay our taxes, we want to pay taxes but not pay taxes now, what makes you think when you hit retirement, you're just suddenly going to wake up and say, I love paying taxes? And you've probably noticed this with your clients.
Oh, yeah.
You get, retired age people, they still absolutely do not want to pay taxes. So what happens is they never touch that money.
Yep.
It just becomes locked away and never utilized.
Until one day it's going to be utilized by their favorite uncle.
Exactly.
Or at least favorite uncle.
And he points out, what is that? If I have money, I never touch it and I pass it on to somebody.
It's life insurance.
And so, and ultimately, if you have investment accounts, or IRAs, 401ks, and you never touch them, you live off interest and pass it on to your heirs, it's expensive life insurance.
No, and it goes to habit too, because I think we're all creatures of habit. And like we said in the beginning, when things are in routine, there's a comfort level there, and we can all attest to that. Okay, but at the same time, if that comfort level goes on and on and on and on for a long period of time, habits are difficult to break. Bad habits and good habits. So looking at a habit of saving and accumulating and never having a utilization of that money, and then suddenly 30 years comes and it's like, I've done this for 30 years. Why would is human nature really going to allow a person to change?
Exactly.
At the drop of a hat? No.
Where our education is to say, get in that same routine, but that new habit that we're going to develop is a habit of choices, responsibility, clarity, that you have a lot of options. And so you get in the habit of doing something disciplined, but it's proven to be to work.
Yep.
It's going to work. There's guarantees. And then as you get disciplined on being principled, the future is great.
Yep. So kind of to wrap things up, I mean, so much of our life is uncertain.
Yeah.
And more so than we think. I mean, nothing is really certain. We don't know, even though life has happened a specific way and tomorrow is very probable, nothing is certain. But there are some things you can do that create certainty. And if you create that certainty, it's going to help you think different. And bottom line is, we have a massive, massive asset, which is our brain. And doing everything possible to make sure your brain functions optimally is going to be the best investment you ever can make. So eating right, exercising, studying. I mean, your brain capacity is immense. That's your biggest asset. And one of the best ways to create clarity inside of that asset is to create certainty in your external world. And
your brain actually never gets old.
No.
If it's exercised.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there's diseases and things that can impair it, but if assuming health, your brain, as long as you keep exercising it, goes. And we've probably all seen that. People that shut off their brain in retirement and never do anything, they get old so much faster than someone that isn't engaged. And I have a client right now that's 80, still goes to a job. It's a business he founded. He got it. He's now passed it on to his kids that they run it. But he loves going to work. And he says, why would I stop? I'm 80 years old. I can set my schedule. I'm around my family. I love doing what I'm doing. And he, on the phone, sounded 50. He sounded great. He sounded fabulous. And he's 80 years old and going strong because, like you said, your brain, is always growing.
Well, the natural tendency of an individual is productivity, and I think it's a difficult thing to do. But it goes. I kind of have a mantra or philosophy that's a lot of the amazing things about life are difficult. If amazing things happen to you with little to no effort, then it's kind of against some of life's sort of universal principle. But looking at productivity, I mean, it's all about being passionate about something. It's all about making progress. And so and once the brain shuts off, the progress is inhibited. So certainty, again, it's hard to come by. But if you create elements of certainty in your life, it's just going to make you be all the more productive. Yeah. So, okay, cool. So we're going to put we'll put the PDF on the blog. Yeah. And so we'll put it on our website as well. So if you're on the blog, we'll have it there. If for some reason it's not pulling up, we'll put it on the website blog. So just go to paradigmlife.net/podcast. But Eric, is awesome to have you. I'm sure you'll be back on.
Yeah. As often as you'll have me, I'll be on.
In the near future. But definitely go and download The Economic Value of Certainty by Les McGuire. It's a very short read, but it's an easy read. It's not, even though there's the word economics in there, it's not written. Well, I guess it was written by an economist, but it was written by more of a rational economist.
And that's what was his talent. Really was bringing these principles down to a level that everyone can understand them. That was a huge strength that he had.
Cool.
It's 12 pages long. You can see, and it's not even the full, printed in this print, which is not too bad. So cool. You can read it quickly.
All right, Eric, thanks for being on.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you guys next time.